Our last video was about working with reds, and now we're going to move on to working with purples and with blues. And let's just zoom in on this picture that we've got to have a look at what's going on. So you can see on the left-hand side, we've got a sort of reddy maroon shirt, and on the right-hand side, we've got more of a blue indigo kind of shirt with some red stripy patterns on it. And if we zoom in closer and closer, you'll see that there's a bit of blue and a bit of red and a bit of purple throughout any blue, red or purple shirt. So what I am saying, red, purple and blue all work together. If you're working with red, then you're going to use purples and blues to put in the shadows and to cool things down. If you're working with purple, you're going to have shades of blue, which are going to be the deeper patches, and you're going to have places which are tending more towards the red. Similarly, once you get to blue, there are going to be shades of purple and red in the brightest parts of it. These colors all work together as part of each other. Okay, here we go, working with the same image that we worked with a while ago for skin tones. I have gone in and created a new layer, purples, and I've put it underneath or behind skin tones so that I won't have to constantly worry about over painting my skin tones. I'm using my custom watercolor round brush at 20% opacity. And if we go and tap into the t-shirt vest on the left-hand side, we can see that it's fairly purple. So let's have a look. You know that I'm quite lazy about creating my own color palettes, and I like to just use whatever I've got so that I don't get bogged down trying to choose something. So what I usually like to do is to put in a fairly lively pale layer all the way through my shirt. So here I go with this, putting in a pale layer, and what I mean by that is one pale layer, I'm not lifting my brush off because I don't want a streaky effect here. And the reason that I do this is so that if I go in later with a 20% eraser or something to add some highlights and reduce the opacity somewhere, I don't go all the way down to white. I just lighten down to this base color quite quickly. So there we go. I've put that in, not being too careful about what goes where. And once I've got that in, I'm going to increase my brush size a bit so I don't get a very, very streaky result. And then I can go back in with the same color again if I'm wanting to work with this purple. So what I do is I do follow my the contours of the body, because that just helps with texture and your finished result. So I go in like this, and working into the more shadowed areas here, I'm not so worried about streakiness because I know it's going to get darker and darker in here. So I've gone in with the same color again, but this time going in streaky and trying to get the edges of the garment reasonably dark. So I don't mind about streakiness, sticking with my 20%. There I go. Okay, so going down here, I am going to go a shade bluer and darker. So we're still in purple, but I'm picking up more bluishness, if you can call it that. And at this point also you start to decide here, this side, we don't want it to be too streaky and pale. So I start filling in with this color. I might actually go over it without lifting my paintbrush so that I don't get extra streakiness, but I just fill in the color on that side closest to the light, like that. And then I can continue from this side, still with streakiness. I'm going to go even bluer, so I'm going to pick up this blue and go in here beneath his neck, and then here under the arm and alongside the body, taking this blue. Now you can see this is quite a lively blue actually, and as we get into the corner near his hand, we're going to need to go a lot darker and heavier. So I'm going to pick up this very dark blue, this navy almost, from my general palette, and I'm going to use that. And getting right into the corners with that. I might I'm considering the possibility of needing to reduce my brush size, but I'm going to stick with where I am for now. So once again, I'm going to go in and just fill in over the top with one layer, not lifting my brush. Now you can see that I've got a fairly streaky result. Now, the thing that we need to bear in mind is if you look over on the far left, you'll remember that we had, let's go here. Here we've got this red belly against our purpley blue belly. And so, of course, all colors are relative, and even deeper purpley blue colors pick up the reflections of colors right in front of them. So we're going to get those maroon reddish tones on our purples. And so we need to bear that in mind. If I go and have a look at, this is my maroon usually, we'll probably bring in a bit of it from this side and start to work it through. And if it gets to be too much, we just adjust back in the opposite direction. So you can see this is quite a hit and miss procedure. And of course, it never comes out exactly the way we think it's going to. That's actually a bit too pale. So I'm going to stick with a more purpley purple coming through here. There we go, building up and building up. And again, coming down the front here, trying to avoid getting too far from the edge. Okay, so it's a back and forth process. I'm going to start blending. So if I pick up from here, I'm going to reduce my brush size a little and start blending across. Then I'm going to pick up from this side, start blending in the opposite direction. And then I also have to decide where is the light coming from. So obviously I've got light coming from up here. We've also got reflection in this area. That's not showing up. Let me just go for white so that I can show you. So in this area we've got reflection coming from the maroon in front, and we're going to have to deal with that. So we may end up with a bit of redness coming in here. We're definitely going to end up with some redness coming in here, and then it's a matter of blending in and through for the purple. So here I go with my blending, purple coming through, pick up my blue and blend through to the purple, pick up my purple and blend through to the blue to soften it off. And then pick up from my red and blend back. Pick up from my purple and blend across. And you can see how that's starting to work. So just in summary, I'm going to go in and use my gel pen. And I'm going to pick up white so that I can write on this. This is my lightest area. This here will be my darkest areas. And so the lightest areas, depending on what is reflecting onto them and what is near to them, will have, they could even have some yellow tones, some goldy tones if there's golden light. But in this stage, I'm going to stick with the maroon. And these tones here can go all the way through to close to black. So let me undo my writing. And let's get into that very deep blue again. Back to watercolor. I can probably take this down to 10% now. And fill in all along the edge of the arm area here where we would be the darkest. I'm actually going to take it back up to the 20%. So you can see this is it can be a time-consuming process. It can also be a somewhat hit-and-miss process, but actually the hit-and-missness is quite fun because it helps you to get texture and interest. And the greater the contrast you use, the more exciting your work can become. So if you pick up going with a narrower brush and start picking up a little bit of texture here, you can end up with some lovely light effects which enhance the round barrel shape of this body, pick up some of the stripiness, and start to add in amazing things that you can have a lot of fun with. So I'm going to put in a bit of texture from this side, see if that will even show up. Yes, it will, coming in. But like a dog tooth effect, I guess, coming in from the right hand side with dark texture lines and coming in from the opposite side with light texture lines. And it's the proximity of the two which gives light and life to everything. So in summary, purple actually has a lot of blue in it and goes all the way through to red and can pick up the colors nearby or the light nearby, and you can experiment and get a lot of freedom to come up with a really cool effect.